stakeholders really being very excited that from a scheduled time, we are now moving to runtime and real time, and it is kind of keeping them almost prepared in case. So every 8 minutes, there is a vulnerability released globally, where if follow the NVD database, it gets updated with any new vulnerability which is released in 8 minutes. Now for you will run a scan, say after 10 days or after 20 hours. If that vulnerability which has been released in 8 minutes exists in your environment, you will only get to know after whatever scheduled time that you run the scan. But with Dynatrace, you will figure it out immediately.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the GB Show. I hope you enjoyed the last episode with Nalin on observability, where we have seen why observability is something every organization should be looking forward for, and how they make the life simpler for the tech and security teams, where we can actually monitor our systems better in the production environment. Also, when Nalin was talking about the security posture, that how we can enhance that by just using security observability. And I promise that we will be having more deep dive on this. And in last episode, you have seen that he has made a call to Ved Prakash, who is a security sales specialist with Dynatrace. So we have pleasure to have Ved in our studio today, and he's going to talk about security observability in detail, that how we can monitor our current systems in production for different vulnerabilities, how the new approach of security scanning and monitoring our systems in the production is different from the traditional VAPT practices. So a lot of new tech, lot of new learnings which we are going to have in today's episode. So let's hear Ved out. Hi Ved, welcome to the GB Show.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to meet you.
Okay, how you find this studio?
Oh, amazing. Very good.
This is the 67th episode powered by Dynatrace. So Ved, you have seen maybe the Nalin's episode which we have spoken on observability, right? So Absolutely. He was, while explaining it, he was talking about the compliance and regulatory requirement and why the observability also needed in the space of security. So he has given us a broader view that what it is all about. But technically, I will like to understand from you, when the term comes, security observability, what does it stand for? So my audience, very first thing they will like to know, and maybe if you can also give us some insights on your experience and your journey towards security observability.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gaurav, for really bringing this up. And this is one of the very exciting areas in cybersecurity. Primarily, you will be seeing adoption going in a magnanimous way across the enterprises. Talking about myself, I come with the experience of almost 23 years in the field of cybersecurity, and being associated with organizations like Palladium Networks, if that rings a bell, which later became into part of Atos. Then moved to HP. From HP, I worked for encryption and key management business, which I established for a French company called Thales. Primarily a very successful journey with them and getting customers onboarded on a practice which was never existing before, called centralized key management, which was again from a concept to realization, where I was instrumental in getting these adoptions across large organizations. And coming to journey in Dynatrace, again, because of the desire for always being associated with something new, something phenomenal which is going to transform the way things happen, is where this word security observability caught my interest. Okay. And as you heard Nalin's talking about how observability is shaping the way digital transformation journey for organizations would come into effect, into a way that will be successfully measured. This is where it helps them to go through that path of adoption, a successful realization of their journey. Security observability is an extension of this, the same technology. It's a new technology approach where you use the lens of security on already the telemetry data for logs, metrics, and traces that you are using it for your observability. How it is going to be different from security is that it is going to bring information to you on a contextual risk assessment of your application in the production environment. Now, this is something which organizations today are not having adequate controls to manage things in runtime and real time. And this is where this monitoring is being done. Observability is done in runtime and real time. But when you associate security also in runtime and real time, this brings a fundamentally altogether a very different approach to look in your risk posture within the organization and the impact that it has on your business.
Okay, so because all your previous experience when I talk about the VAPT, when you are mentioning that need to happen, pre-production, and now when you are talking about it's a production-based scanning and production-based VAPT stuff. So how it is different?
So first of all, it is not a scanning technology. And you rightly said that all the other tools or the technologies that have existed have gone through their evaluation and maturity phases. So PT or VA as an approach starts and is still very critical when you have an application which you are building up. You need to test them for any vulnerabilities before you release them in pre-production. And that's where technologies like source code analysis tool or security application, application security testing practice or tools becomes very critical. Where you go through the source code, see if there are any vulnerabilities and you take an corrective action. But the moment you move it on in production environment, none of these tools have any kind of role to play there. And that's where when you use a scans primarily, which you try to. But you will see all these tools that I took name of, all these are outside in approach. In the sense you try to go from outside and try to figure it out if there is any way to see if there is a deviation or an anomaly which can be correlated with any vulnerabilities that we are aware of or exist in known databases, and you try to work it out. This approach which Dynatrace takes it is inside out. So fundamentally, we are talking about very different. So this captures a lot of vulnerabilities which is missed by these tools. And more important, this is in production environment where neither your SAST will work, neither your SCA tool will work. More further difference is that these tools have a limitation on the first party codes. Primarily, third party code they will be able to give you, but when it comes to first party codes, you will have challenge, and that's also in production environment. Dynatrace will again bring you the insights in terms of the risk posture, the vulnerabilities that have been found on those things where these tools don't work. Scan, when you talked about VA primarily, where you have very good technology tools, again, they are point in time. They run on a scheduled basis. And they kind of also, on the back end, correlate with the database on the vulnerabilities and try to assess it if that vulnerability, known vulnerability is matched when they do the scanning part. Whereas we and Dynatrace are doing it where we are following the traffic which is flowing in or going in the system and traffic that is going out. So it's completely based on data access paths. And very important feature is that the vulnerability that are being found is in the runtime, means it is the library that is used by the application while the application is running in your production environment. None of them will tell you about this specific kind of risk which we provide you, because these are the actual risks that you need to get aware of. And then you contextualize this risk in sense, is there an exploit available? Is there a data asset attached to it? Or is there an internet exposure to this? Basis of that, you bring a severity score or you calibrate this, which your team knows that this is the priority that I need to work upon. Whereas all the traditional technologies that we know today, they will tell you just the list of vulnerabilities which have an assigned CVSS score given by NVD, which could be filed on the disk, which could also be used by the library, but they will not be able to tell you, is that library used in the memory of your application in your production environment. So that's a fundamental differentiator in terms of detection part. More, I will tell you, the value relation is not on the detection, but even a bigger activity, I would say a factor that helps organization is mitigation of this vulnerability. So traditionally, all these technology tools, they give you a kind of report where the team invests manual effort in compiling these reports, prepare the master list, and then kind of go through it, filter it out, and sort it out, then upload it in service desk, which then reaches out to the application owners, who then see that these are the high priority alerts that I need to ask my team to look upon. Okay. They pass it to them, who spends manual time to investigate which one I should get started with. All are having the high severity score. And then they pick randomly because they don't know which one is the first for me to get started. All this problem is solved from the technology that we provide, which gives you access right to the vulnerable function which is being detected, to the line of code, which is reflected to the development team and the security team in the same console, and it prioritizes. This is the first activity that the team needs to fix, which has this application context associated with it. So that changes the way fixing of this vulnerability happens in organizations.
Fair enough. I think quite a elaborated. You have given a big difference, and I have very not one or two, but many questions in mind when I'm looking into or hearing this whole story. So before I go line by line, I would like to understand, because traditionally, as all the tools were, pre-production scanning were happening, and when you identified that there is a risk which need to be solved at the production level, and why the vulnerabilities are actually going to the production itself, that is becomes a question, right? So because something is in production for a long time and then you find the vulnerabilities and you want to fix it, instead of, because right now it's like new, you will create a new patch, update over there and then test and do, but live having these vulnerabilities, why it becomes so crucial? Very first difference, I will like to know that, because the CISOs or the CIOs knows that, okay, the pre-production scan is not enough. In production, I need to have it live, right? So one is that. So I will hear that, then I have multiple or many questions for you.
Absolutely.
One
so
by one.
First problem that today the CIOs, CISOs or the key stakeholders have in the organization is primarily the backlog of vulnerabilities, how to minimize it and ensure that we are taking action what matters, focus on what matters and not focus on what doesn't matter. A very good example recently of Log4j, which hit across many organizations. Now after that got hit and people ran through their tools and detected some 10,000 instances in any large banking kind of an environment, which I'm giving an example. Now they didn't know, they just said that this is needs to be taken action to fix it. Among 10,000, which one do I first need to get started is totally kind of left on the team that has to take corrective action. They don't have any pointers. But when you use Dynatrace, you realize that out of the 10,000, there are only 2,000 which has a relevance or impact on the application which is connecting with that library. The rest of them are potential, but they are not actual risk. While as a hygiene, you need to get rid of them and you can either delete them directly by selecting them rather than getting into a development effort to go on, investigate and mitigate those. And after you are done with that, the security team does not need to retest it and validate it. It is updated on the runtime in the console itself. So it saves complete manual intervention on these activities where the security team also is being utilized unnecessarily, where they could use them for a more better activities and where they can be more productive on high priority alerts which comes from SOC or other aspect that they need to look at it. So this is where I see it is changing the way process that has been there in the organization, and it is making you towards runtime and real-time ready. So every morning when you walk in organization, CIO, CISO says these are top 10 vulnerabilities, and by end of the day he says 7 of them have been taken care of because the development team have already fixed it, and you're not dependent on a frequent scans which creates the backlog of vulnerabilities with a lot of manual and false positives that come. So in Dynatrace, there is no false positive conceptually. Okay. Reason being, you're only getting to know what is being used by the what is used in the library, which is being called by the application. That's it. So you are only addressing to specific to that, and rest other you don't need your team to immediately focus on.
I think the point which you mentioned about false positive, that is of course everyone's biggest concern. Maybe I will like you to elaborate more that why no false positive, how it's getting solved then and there.
Absolutely. So no false positive, because these are the ones which the application is actually associated in the production environment and calling those functions when the code is being executed. And you are actually pointing out those vulnerabilities, those vulnerable functions, and the risk of those vulnerable functions, whether it has exploitability or data asset or the internet exposure. Whereas if there is a vulnerability which is identified, but it's file on the disk. So here file on the disk becomes a false positive for you. And this one becomes the actual ones which you need to take care of. That is where the fundamental difference. So as an hygiene measure, I will say, yes, file on disk needs to be also get rid of. But then your priority should not be first to focus there, even if that has a high CVSS score. And this one has a low CVSS score, but this is the one which is being called in, or where it increases the application risk posture of your application. Awesome. So that's something which I see CISOs and the stakeholders really being very excited that from a scheduled time, we are now moving to runtime and real time, and it is kind of keeping them almost prepared in case. So every 8 minutes, there is a vulnerability released globally, where if follow the NVD database, it gets updated with any new vulnerability which is released in 8 minutes. Now for you will run a scan, say after 10 days or after 20 hours. If that vulnerability which has been released in 8 minutes exists in your environment, you will only get to know after whatever scheduled time that you run the scan. But with Dynatrace, you will figure it out immediately.
I think that will solve a big problem and a big headache for the CISOs which they are running these days. But what is the proof of concept? Have you is it been implemented somewhere? Because it's new for me also. When I talk about this is something have not been done in past, but is there a proof of concept, any testing, or anywhere it's been implemented? Any success case studies, if you have something which you like to add?
Absolutely. So we have quite a good success stories also with us. While this security observability as a practice has started 4 years back in the organization, and we are towards our own evolution phase with bringing more capabilities, not only on the runtime vulnerability analytics part, which I called out, there is also feature called attack detection and blocking. So where when you go ahead and figure out that there is a command line or SQL injection or a JNDI kind of attack, which is at a code level, it automatically blocks it at a user level. Automatically, without letting, while the team may take time to solve it or patch it up, in between, if there is a successful exploit that happens, you are assured that it has been taken care of. So those are the future, I would say, the capabilities which are being added as we move. But on the on the adoption side, there are large financial organizations in India. There are, so just to let you know, largest private bank as well as public sector bank in India have been one of the early adopters for this technology. And for proof of concept, we are running it across other large organizations who are kind of in a validation phase to see how they can take it up to an enterprise adoption. So we are seeing a very good attraction towards this, and CISOs and the CIOs are very excited, because this is solving a lot of problem and helping them to be future ready from compliance perspective also, which I will elaborate maybe in the discussion.
So of course the compliance which I will talk about, but for me right now at the technical perspective, if I say like what are the few vulnerabilities you will like to name which has been identified in the production because of the Dynatrace tool which you have, and where the other traditional tool got failed?
So the exact nature of vulnerabilities, I can bring it out from that report, from that finding that we have. But just to give you an example, that there was one bank which was having a mobile application being released. And we happened to be there because Dynatrace they have been using, and we discussed that why don't we also kind of validate it with our security capability. And they were surprised that we discovered 6 critical vulnerability, high and critical, which needed to be fixed. Now that was not discovered because of the other technology tools of SaaS DAS that they were using it. And they themselves were surprised to how come we missed this. Now this is where it is technology, because of the difference of technology approach. This identifies those vulnerabilities which is missed by the other tools. Taking an example of specific vulnerability, I think I will need to refer back to those reports because there are multiple
that's
types.
fine.
Yeah, but I am just telling you that these are the pointers that makes the comparison for them also very clear, that there is a distinct advantage on the security observability approach compared to a outside in scan kind of an approach.
And here I will like to ask you one thing, that this approach which Dynatrace is promoting right now, you are going to complement the traditional scans or you are going to replace the traditional ones?
Fantastic question. And this is where we feel that while our capability primarily comes from implementing the observability, which is where we deploy an agent which collects the telemetry data related to your logs, metrics, and traces. And we put a security lens on it to see if there is an anomaly or a vulnerable component which being detected either in third-party libraries or at code level, and primarily then brings up to your attention in the runtime and real time. Now, scan-based tools would be required, especially when it is in pre-production phase. Primarily, when you are building an application, you need to invest in SCA as well as SaaS tools. When you move to in production environment, when you use VA scans, you only not do it for application layer, but also for infra layer. Now, currently, Dynatrace is only focused on application layer. So, infra layer, we are not giving you those results. For infra level, you will still need that. And organizations have already invested in these technologies because they have been traditionally last 20 years existence and are kind of important from a compliance perspective at different phases. But when it comes in production, that's where we fit in, where we are complementing to the investment that is already there. But in future, in the roadmap where we are also extending the capability on the OS layer vulnerabilities, then I would definitely say that this is where the vulnerability scanning will no more be required. You would directly be relying on single source of truth, both for the application as well as for the infrastructure beneath the application. And so OS level vulnerabilities you will get to know as well.
Fair enough. And with this new approach, I think the more of the control will go to the CXO team, where the developers will be putting up. And how you have seen the wave? Are the CXOs happy with this? How the collaboration is happening?
Yes. So it's as I said, this is going to transform the processes. And large organizations changing process is not easy. For CXOs, they see that the manual engagement is taken away and their team focus on qualitative engagement rather than the manual sorting and reconciliation and kind of routine coordination, where the security team also spend significant time. For development team, they now directly see the results in the same monitoring console where they see the performance information data being visible, and they get to know what needs to be done. What is the first action item for them to look into fixing the identified vulnerability, and what is that I need to do as an action to fix the vulnerability. All those suggestions are already given in the user interface that we provide, and they take the action and it's updated in runtime. So security team becomes more of an observer here and ensures that they are taking care of doing the right approach and in the defined time frame to meet the compliance regulations. And they focus on other engagement and activities which are significant for them to ensure that the security posture of organization is quite strengthened.
In our conversation, you mentioned compliance quite often. So, how you see that this particular terminology or technology will actually fulfill my compliance requirements much better compared to the other ones?
Oh, amazing. A very good question, Gaurav. And in fact, all these new technologies, I feel compliance lags behind, especially when we talk about emerging technology and new technology. The way currently that compliance requires is that you need to have a risk posture every 15 days or quarterly that is being there, which people assess it. Here, you are kind of being proactive in assessing it in runtime and real time. And if any kind of vulnerability that has created any system breach for you, you are aware of it, and you can, as per the RBI or the certain that you need to inform it within 6 hours if there is something which has created a damage. You are very clearly knowing it upfront rather than doing an assessment and after that reporting it to them. So that's where this enables you to be more proactive, more, I would say, future ready and compliance ready for any kind of risk associated with cybersecurity threats that or people they would like to be aware of, and ensure that you are kind of vigilant and you are being very proactive in taking care of these kind of risks.
Fair enough. And you as mentioned, of course, the requirements and the technology which we are talking about seems quite promising, right? But how pocket friendly it is? What are the numbers says?
So absolutely. So Dynatrace primarily is being used by most of the organizations, large organizations, for their observability function, and where you get information on your performance, fault, and availability of your business critical application. And this is enabling or using the same technology with the security lens. So you already have invested in Dynatrace, and there is no implementation for this security observability. You already have done the implementation. It is just a switch on function that you need to do on the existing implementation that is already being there. There is no performance impact on the application. So it's a very incremental license cost that associated with this functionality, which becomes very reasonable for all the organizations who have invested in Dynatrace. So that way, the ROI becomes even more better.
And for the organization who are not yet with Dynatrace on observability, will this functionality standalone make sense for them?
Absolutely. So we have a different flavor of agent that we use to instrument the application. Ultimately, the technology is instrumentation. That because of which you sit inside the application, monitor the traffic going in, going out, and able to detect the vulnerability, correlate with the National Vulnerability Database as well as Sneak, with whom we have partnership. And then you calibrate the risk score or severity score on the context, whether it is exploitable data set or internet exposure. And you say that, look, this is the first vulnerability, you should immediately start fixing it. So we have a very light flavor of agent which only does for security function. So there are a spread where you have being agents installed for full stack monitoring, which is observability, and you have a light flavor which is only having security lens, which captures those relevant information, and they will only give you the security observability, not the full stack observability. So we have these choices available, and customers have extended it to across the enterprise. So primarily, it is not limiting to what Dynatrace covers as an observability. It is extending to enterprise-wide, where you have all the servers being monitored by security capability, where we have this lighter version being installed, and helps you to ensure the runtime posture.
Fair enough. I think, Ved, it was really insightful talking to you. I have learned many new things because with the approach which you have mentioned today, and I think that it's gonna change the game of application security worldwide, I must say, because today, if I say 90% still working with those traditional one. So my last question for you, for my audience, is specifically that if there are application security leads or there are newbies who are actually going to start their career in application security, what advice you will have for them, that how the future and how the vulnerability management going to happen in future, or any good advices you have for them? So my audience is all yours.
This is a very emerging and challenging area, and especially always there is a new technology and new threats both coming in. So my advice is that this is a field which will keep you always hooked on with new knowledge, with understanding that there are a lot of learning curve in this journey. And when you associate, you start from getting your hands on experience by running these tools primarily in the different phases of the software development life cycle, and then you kind of pick up the field where your strength and expertise lies, especially. And the vulnerability management will always be an area, because vulnerabilities are not going to end. It's like we create a police, thefts are not going to stop. So this is an always ever growing opportunity area, but different technologies will come at different point in time to ensure that these old threats are neutralized and be ready for the new kind of threats. So that's definitely going to be exciting journey, and I would definitely suggest all the newbies to look into this as one of the promising career options, which will both rewarding from the role wise, I would say from the compensation wise, as well as from the function wise. It keeps you excited.
Okay, I can see many smiles coming on the faces on the other side of the camera. So let's see. So all the best to you guys, and all the best to you with this new technology. And thanks for being on the GB show. I have, as a ritual, I have something for you. Maybe we call it small. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Gaurav.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, I will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.